Welcome back to another Final Fantasy trading card game set review. We're doing Opus 13, and this time we're covering the wind element. I'm Mysidia Gaming, and I'm joined as per usual by Travis Pfeifer. How you doing, Travis?
Hey, Alex. Good to see you today. I've got a lot of exciting things going on this week. Just released a video with Alex Hancock's recapping Opus 12. So check that out on my channel if you want to kind of see the hits and misses, the stuff that was really cool, the stuff we underestimated. It's a really good video, and he's a great guy.
Yeah, so that's the former world champ, and then Travis, who is possibly future world champ. So, you know... definitely,
crossed, baby.
Yeah, a couple of sound minds, good people to hear it from. So I'll definitely be checking that out as soon as I find some time to sit down and enjoy it. But anyway, we're gonna get right into the cards here, and the first one that we're going to talk about is Arc. And so Arc is a Warrior of Light backup, so that's kind of exciting. And he's from Final Fantasy III, and he has the text. So it's 1 wind and dull. And that's his action ability. Choose 1 standard unit forward or job Warrior of Light forward you control. It gains this forward cannot be chosen by your opponent's abilities until the end of the turn. So, you know, you can use this preemptively. You can use this on the stack if someone targets you with an ability. But with abilities like this, they're kind of tricky because they... you have to float CP to use them or reactivate your backups somehow or pitch a card from hand or something, and that's really tricky to do. If it's not a decisive moment, you can lose the long game that way. So they're really tricky to use these types of cards, and not even to mention that this is an Arc card. So this is a card that there's a forward version of. There's many forward versions of this card. So that name clash is kind of tricky. So I'm kind of curious. Travis is our resident Warrior of Light expert. If this makes the cut in a Warrior of Light deck, or if it's sadly maybe just going to be a standard unit. But even then, all the other arcs are around standard units, right? So that makes this one. You know, what's going to happen here?
So the 5-cost one that we got in Opus 10, if you're building some kind of standard unit deck, you're probably playing that one. It has an EX burst. It like brings one back from the break zone, plays one to the field. This one, of all the new like Lunith, Arc, Refia backups we got, I actually like this one's ability the most because, as you pointed out, being able to nullify an opponent choosing you with an ability is very strong. However, it's also in the color that is least supported by Warriors of Light, which is wind. So like your typical Warriors of Light is fire, water, maybe some dabbling into earth as well, but wind has the least amount of support in that element. That said, it would go well with like Bart's. You could put it in a Bart's Boko deck to help protect Bart's. And something I was just thinking about as you were reading it too, I might try this in my Dancer deck, which is a deck based around a standard unit, the Dancer. So it would be cool to have something to help protect her. And of course, like the others, it can be pulled into the field off of the Light Refia. Again, for me, it has that name clash. And as you pointed out, like there are kind of some better arcs, but I do think it has potential. As usual, wind always feels like it just gets a little bit extra. So I think this one could see some play in some creative builds maybe, but I might be wrong about that too.
There's also something to consider where a lot of times in FFTCG, you want to have a certain number of category cards or, job cards, Warrior of Lights. If you have 5 Warrior of Lights on the field, you can do X. And sometimes that's really tricky because there's no backup Warrior of Lights. And this is an example, not a real thing. So, yeah. So sometimes when we have the more cards we have printed on backups that were not backups before, that's enabling things in the future where you can assemble, all of these Warrior of Light backups, and that just automatically turns on some cards' abilities. So that's always something to keep your eye on for the future.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go into the next one.
All right, so from Warrior Light, we're going to go to another archetype or tribal, and that is Class 0 Cadets. Here we have 8. He is a 3-cost, 7,000 power forward. He Class 0 Cadet, of course, Type 0. He reads, the cost required to cast 8 is reduced by 1 for each job Class 0 Cadet you control. There's nothing that says he can't become 0, so he can become free if you have 3 of them. And then when 8 enters the field, if you have cast 2 or more cards this turn, 8 gains haste until the end of the turn. He's honestly just a really solid card. He doesn't have any downsides. His entry effect... So the first 8, when he entered, he would reactivate, I think, like 3 Class 0 Cadet characters. So they're kind of the same thing in that sense. This one, it gets cheaper to put down, but that other one would reactivate him. So it ultimately ends up being the same thing. But beyond that other one, I think the only other thing it did is it had a special, which was, only so useful, whereas this one, at least it gets haste. I mean, it's solid. I don't think it's really going to do anything Cadets couldn't do already. Cadets already had access to haste and other cards, but you'll probably play it over that other 8 just for that second effect, because having another haster is never bad. So yeah, I mean, he's fine. He's just a normal solid Cadet.
Yeah, so that other 8, you might even play both, or maybe like a mix.
Yeah.
The other 8, it could activate your forwards, right? So then if you attack with everybody and then activate main phase 2, that's kind of niche, but it's there. The special is actually not that bad. It's like it's a protection special. It's cheap to use, and then now there's 6 copies of 8 in the game, and it protects you from summons and abilities, just Aid himself. Although he's not really a desirable target for summons or abilities anyway, so yeah, I think this one's just slightly better purely too because it takes away the initial investment, whereas with 8 you needed to have the CP to pay for him. This one can be free, so I think that's just overall better.
Agreed.
Okay, next up we have Ochu, one of the the coolest Final Fantasy monsters out there, and this guy is no exception. So when he enters the field, he's a 1 CP monster. When he enters the field, choose up to 2 backups, activate them, and then you're damage 3. He becomes a forward with 7k power, and that can happen anytime. This one I think, like, it could be playable. It really just depends. If you have a deck that wants to activate backups, and there's so many ways to do it, this could be one of them. And it's kind of nice in that, like, you're doing your backup activation plan, and then maybe you get a forward out of it later. So this one's like more playable than the other ones we've seen, but still, like, there's a lot of options for activating your backups.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Wind, again, gets kind of the one that's just a little bit better than the others, mainly for the fact that he overpays for himself. So if you had 3 backups, you could tap 2, put down a 2 cost, use your last one to put Ocho out. Now you've got 2 more to spend. So I could, if he was ever going to see play, he could maybe see play in like a Storm deck, a deck that wants to cast a lot of cards every turn. And this would be a really cheap way for them to cast a card and get their backups back, and then they'd have a body. And then, other than that, obviously he's going to be the same as any of the other monsters from the set. One other thing I'll say is that I've always thought as the Ochu is like the younger brother of Malboro, even though they're not really related in any sense. Like, he's the one that he can be a pain too, but he doesn't have all the status effects of a Marlboro. So whenever I would see an Ochu in a game, I'm like, oh, dangerous, but okay, not as dangerous. I
totally get what you're saying there. That's awesome. Okay, what do we have next?
Next, we have something quite interesting, and that is Cid Haze on a forward. He's a 4 cost, 8,000 power body, category 3, job engineer. That's important. When Cid Haze enters the field or attacks, activate all the job engineer you control. You may then dull Cid Haze, choose 1 forward other than Cid Haze. It gains 1,000 power for each job engineer you control until the end of the turn. Holy cow. I mean, that text can only get better as the game goes on. Right now, we don't have a ton of engineers. We've got Cid Haze, we've got some Cid Pollendina, we've got Lid as an engineer, but there's not like a whole lot of them. But still, that effect is so good, and this card feeds into itself so well that as we get more engineers, surely there's going to be some bomb potential there eventually. I don't know if it's quite there right this moment, but still, what a fun effect. So he almost has like pseudo brave, because anytime he attacks, he's just going to reactivate himself, which is neat because then it feeds into his own effect where you can then dull him, and 1,000 power for every engineer you control. That's really strong. So awesome card. I don't know if it's quite there yet just because we don't have a ton of engineers, but something to look out for in the future.
I love the art, of course,
yes.
With the airship in the back and everything. We do have, like, there's Luca, the Final Fantasy IV engineer in Earth. There's Cid Previa and his grandson or whatever, and then there's Cindy mid-Previa. Then there's Cindy in Final Fantasy 15. You said Lid. There's more. There's actually more. There's really? More than you think, and it's kind of cool because there's a bunch of backups. And if you play this with backups, it's kind of like other cards that Wind have had in the past. Where so for example, like Vada is a card that's like a 4 CP 8k. That's all you get. But you can play him for free. Well, I think it'd be pretty easy to play this guy for 2 CP, like 2, if you have 2 engineer backups, and then you can reactivate them. So the more engineers we get, the more viable this will become. It's a lot more work. You're building an engineer deck, but I think it could be a low value, or sorry, like a high value card, like low cost. pretty neat. Like definitely one for the future. I don't think we're quite there, but okay. Totally. Now we've got, so here's another one, Cid Pollendina. So this is our backup engineer searcher. So this is perfect. They go hand in hand. It's an EX burst engineer searcher. So if you get the other Cid Haze with this, then you have this, and then maybe you have Luca, also Final Fantasy IV, and you have an Earthwind Engineer 4 deck that is kind of a mix or something. And there you have your two, and the Luca Final Fantasy IV, you don't actually have to build a 4 deck with her. Her effect is around bringing in backups, and it can play in any deck. So there you go. There's your 2-card combo to make Cid Haze a 2 CP forward that can raise by 2k and activate your backups every turn, and that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Backup EX Burst Searcher, what more could you want? So I'll just say how much I love this art. I don't know what it is about him. I don't know if it's his big smile or his bushy beard, or his head is just so round. There's something so just pleasing to me about this
goggles,
art. Like yeah, he's just like so cute. Like, I don't know, I love this art.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Okay, let's go on to a pretty big one here.
This is our Wind Legend for the set. This is Shara from Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced. Job Archer. She is a 2-cost, 4,000 power forward, EX burst. She reads, when Shara enters the field, choose one card named Ritz in your break zone, add it to your hand. When a category Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced character other than Shara enters your field, place one Viera counter on Shara. You may dull and remove one Viera counter from Shara for the action ability, which is choose one category FFTA character. It gains this character cannot be chosen by your opponent's summons or abilities until the end of the turn. So note that on all of that it says character. So if you have a lot of FFTA backups and someone's trying to do backup hate, freeze it, whatever, you can use that to protect your backups. That's pretty neat. That being said, I don't know about this card because so far the Ritz game is you actually want Ritz in the break zone because that's how March brings Ritz back onto the field for free. So to me, that's a little strange that she brings it back, but I guess you could think of it like play Shara, get the Ritz back. Now you can pitch the Ritz again for the March. So I guess in that way, it's kind of card value. And it is neat that anytime a character enters the field that's FFTA, and again, that includes backups, you pile up these Viera counters on her. However, unless you have some kind of shenanigans to reactivate Shara, you're only going to be able to do that once a turn because it does require to dull her. The other thing is that she is very weak. Now, granted, maybe that counter will help protect her if she gets targeted, but I almost wonder if you want to use it to target others. So I have to admit, every time I've read this card, it reads to me just a little weak, and March Ritz is so strong already. I don't see how this helps it, but I was proven wrong by those two before, so maybe there's an angle here that I'm not seeing. So if someone has an angle here, please tell me, because for me, don't get me wrong, the idea of protecting Ritz is obnoxious, but she's so weak, I don't foresee that being an issue, but I could see just, hey, I can at least protect Ritz once, so go F yourself.
Yeah, this one, I actually read it a few times, and then the final time I read it, I'm like, oh my god, that's a legend. That's the legend for Wind.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't get that. But there's certainly value there, because when you grab a Ritz, then, you're effectively just paying the CP cost, or like the card is coming out of your hand, but you've saved that. So it's a really nice value card just to play. You can protect it, and I feel like that's not a bad play because your opponent's scared of it. They've just used something to try to get rid of it, and you've protected it, and then now it's still there and they want to get rid of it again. And maybe, I think the key thing will be how many counters you can reliably stack up on it, and then how hard are people going to try to get rid of it. ETBs are going to be really popular because there's lots of ETBs that can blank this thing, without having to actually expend too much resources. Like if you cast a summon on this, that's going to suck. But if you play Athena, or if you play, whatever fire, any of the many fire forwards that can ping, then you're not going to feel so bad about taking this thing out, or you're not going to feel so bad about them protecting it. But if you have to do anything else, you could lose some value.
And her being a 4K means she is very susceptible to Athena, a Valifor, a Samurai, Cyan, Cleave, like any of those, because those counters aren't going to do anything against those big board hits.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, I can bust out my Duncan in for fire attacks
Exactly.
and hit this thing. Okay, moving on, we've got White Mage, and this is a really cool effect. So it's a 3 CP, standard unit, category 3, cost 0 action ability, so you can just use it. Choose one forward. During this turn, the next damage dealt to it is reduced by 2,000. Instead, you can only use this ability once per turn. It's Mini Cecil. So we have the whatever, like the Opus 9 or something Cecil that was a 4 CP water forward that could reduce by 4k, and it had a bunch of other stuff, but this is way more accessible. It's in a different color. It's a really cool effect, and I would love to see people try this out. I think it's good enough to warrant some testing, but 2k is definitely a big step down from 4k.
Sure. Well, and to be fair, though, that Cecil did then take that damage on himself, whereas this one kind of just disperses it. Definitely, again, worth a try in my Dancer deck because it's a standard unit in Wind. And again, the Wind standard unit seems to just get a little more than the other ones. It's a really solid effect. You can use it once on your turn, once on your opponent's turn. And because it doesn't specify any forward, you can just pick one. In Limited especially, this is going to be really strong. You pull one of these, you've now got this protection for any forward on your field. So anything damage-based, they're just going to... Even if they can still kill it, if it requires them to spend another CP or another card, like, I think it's totally done its job. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this one maybe pop up here and there.
And he looks really cozy in those robes.
Yeah, he does.
All right.
Well, if one White Mage wasn't enough, here comes the second one. So this is a backup White Mage, standard unit, multi-playable from Final Fantasy Explorers, because you can tell by that artwork. It's our 3-cost backup. It's our Cascade one. So this one, when it enters the field, you turn over cards until you reveal fire or ice, do the shuffling, put them on the bottom. So yeah, it's the Wind's version of this, going backwards in the book set. I see those happy little people in the background that you mentioned earlier.
And I do.
Yeah, I want to see
one.
And his costume's kind of weird. Like, he has the typical red diamonds of a White Mage. White Mage is my favorite job in all of Final Fantasy, but his coat doesn't look very white. Like, am I crazy? It looks almost like it's a dull pink or something.
Yeah, we're just
I don't know.
Mucked up, you know? Maybe
maybe it's really dirty.
A little too much exploring there.
Exactly. But yeah, so, your standard fetch card that they've added to this new type. So it does what it does.
Moving on. Next up, we have Stiltzkin. Who's not Final Fantasy 9?
Yeah.
What? Like, I know there's this version, but the 9 version should have been in the game first. Just saying. So 3 CP, backup, FFCC category, job Moogle, always good. Those are two. It's an important category and an important job. And so when Stiltzkin enters the field, you can search for a forward of cost 1 or a monster of cost 1 and add it to your hand. That's become more relevant as of last set. This is a good searcher to search many different things. All of the new monsters, obviously. So here's the searcher in Limited that actually can search. But also your whole Cid Previa, Mid Previa thing from last set. And then if you go back even further, there's other 1 CP decks that you could do with, like, the Onion Knights from a while ago. I think that's 2 sets ago, and there's other things. So just a good searcher to round out our crew.
Yeah, he's super versatile. If you look, Job Moogle, that's relevant to a lot of things. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, as if Norstalin needed another target, and a lot of 1 cost. You can grab Boko off of this. You could grab a Layak, like you said. I do like that in Limited they actually have a searcher for all those monsters. That's cool. Yeah, really, my only hang up with this card is that why is it not the 9 Stiltzkin? If anyone has watched my videos, the end of my videos have a little tag with an adorable version of Stiltzkin, and it says, "Thanks for watching." He's such a cool character in 9. Like, he's so memorable because you run into him so much. So shame on them for putting him in Crystal Chronicles before they gave us the 9 version. Good card, though.
Unacceptable.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of Crystal Chronicles, we have got a Selkie. That is a 4-cost, 7,000 power forward, job standard unit, multi-playable. When Selkie enters the field, if the cost paid to cast Selkie included fire CP, Selkie gains haste until the end of the turn. When Selkie enters the field, if the cost paid to cast Selkie included Earth CP until the end of the turn, all the forwards you control gain 2,000 power and brave. Again, one of these standard units that was probably solid and Limited because you're going to be playing with that anyway. I doubt you'd ever use this in Constructed. Nonetheless, I have to once again point out, I don't know what it is about Wind that they love so much. The Wind one, I think it's slightly better effects. Haste is great, and giving all your forwards 2k Brave. If this was an Earth card, you would have to pick one and give it 2k Brave, but for some Wind is like, nah, just give that to everybody. So again, amongst this type of card, this one is just slightly better.
It's cool that it gives all the forwards the 2k Brave, but we literally have a better version of this. It doesn't buff your team, but there's a 3 CP hero, Nero, from Final Fantasy XIV. And if you have an alternate or a different element forward on the field and you play him, he's a 3 CP 7k that gets 2k Brave haste. So just straight up better, I think. So go play that instead of this one.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we have Dryad, which is a 1 CP summon from Final Fantasy Explorers, and it is an EX burst. Choose one character you control gains. This character cannot be chosen by your opponent's abilities until the end of the turn. However, if you have managed to take 5 points of damage or more, hopefully you're not in too rough shape, draw 1 card, and then you get all the characters gain that ability. They all get cannot be chosen by abilities. So obviously that once you get to 5 damage, much more powerful. Drawing a card, super duper great on an EX burst and just anyway, but otherwise this card is kind of whatever, because just abilities, not summons as well. It's tricky. Like, there's so many things that do that. It's going to be hard to cut for this card, I think.
Yeah, like the artwork, very, very crazy looking artwork. And like every summon in this set, they very much leaned into this 5 damage theme. And the damage 5 ability on this card is crazy. Draw a card, replaces itself, and your whole board is protected from abilities. That's awesome. But not counting for the 5 damage, I mean, protection is always solid, but we've gotten a bunch of other things, especially in this set, that protect from abilities specifically. And the thing I thought the most of is, like, would you replace Unsaganashi for this? I don't know if you would, because Unsaganashi still kind of has the instant speed. Yeah, again, hitting this, if you're on damage 5 as a burst, is going to feel incredible, but are you going to rely on that? Probably not. So this is one I'm going to put in the you probably won't use category, but I also won't be surprised if I was wrong and people just value the protection.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go on to our next card.
Yeah. Oh, what a cute little penguin we have here. It's Pavlov. Pavlov is a job penguin. Very appropriate. Another Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, and backup, 2 CP backup. When Pavlov enters the field, choose up to 2 category FFCC characters other than Pavlov, activate them. Again, I don't know why they think Nordstalin needs even more targets, but here you go, he's even more targets. And especially like that Wind Earth deck, they play so many Crystal Chronicle characters based off of Nordstalin, Waltrill, Lael. He's absolutely going to have targets to hit. You know, you build around. You're not going to just throw this in any Wind deck. You're going to make sure you have category FFC characters. But man, I love the artwork. I love that he's basically like a jack of spades. It's so cool. He's like on a traditional card artwork. He's holding little cherries. He looks like he's got a little Moogle behind him. Like, what adorable artwork. I love it.
So from what I understand, there actually is a deck of cards you can buy, and this is one of them.
Really?
Yeah. So there's this artwork is from there's a few others like it that's from the Square Enix product. Just like when they made all those tabletop Chocobo games, they brought all that art and used it in FFTCG. It's the same thing. So this is crazy. Like, it's just like a free backup in a deck that already had a bunch of stuff, and you can also activate your forwards. So that's kind of nice niche, or nice in the in the long-term game, you could activate an important forward or something, and the only thing going against it is that at some point you're gonna run out of space to put FFCC cards in your deck. So they can there's gonna hit a mass where it's like they just can print whatever they want because you can't fit it all anyway. So
yeah, exactly.
All right, the next card is Barbariccia, which is our Archfiend from Final Fantasy IV. It's a 2 CP forward, 5k power. When she enters the field, deal 2,000 power or damage to all forwards your opponent controls for each job Archfiend you control. So if you have all 4 out there, then you're going to deal 8k, which is kind of cool. At the end of your turn, if you have all 4 out there, then you can also search for a Golbez. So this is like the ultimate payoff for the Archfiend's deck, but it's also going to be their board clear. And that seems really nice. If Archfiends is the thing, this is the thing, because those are 2 really strong effects.
Yeah, she absolutely feeds into the new Golbez we got, which pulls out 2 CP Arch, card, a 2 CP card, and all the Archfiends fit into that. It's interesting. Barbariccia was kind of the one that was always the most useful and had the most playable. Specifically, the one that when it came in, it either shrunk something to 1,000 or it like dealt it damage minus 1,000.
It set them,
yeah. So honestly, that one is still better for that situation. Like this one, you're only going to use it in the Golbez Archfiend deck. I think the other one is probably better all things considered. And currently there's no backup Archfiends, which even if they were, it wouldn't matter because it specifies forwards. And I don't know how realistic that's going to be to get all of them out there, but I don't know because I haven't tested out the new Golbez. Maybe there is a really easy chain that it's a lot easier than you think about. And the idea of just, if you get them out first and you haven't found Golbez and then you get to go draw him for free, awesome sauce. So yeah, cool artwork. I think it'll fit in really nicely with the new Archfiend thing they're pushing.
Yeah, big time.
All right. Next, we have Balthier from Final Fantasy XII, although this is his Tactics version. He is a 4-cost, 7,000 power forward, Job Sky Pirate. When Balthier enters the field, choose one Job Sky Pirate forward of cost 2 or less in your break zone. Play it onto the field. Dull 2 active Job Sky Pirate. Choose one Job Sky Pirate forward. Until the end of the turn, it gains 2,000 power and haste. I have not liked any of the Balthier cards pretty much ever, and so this one I do like a lot. One, I like his art. 2, it seems to me he was built to be played with that Fran Legend Sky Pirate we got in Opus X, because he can target her, bring her immediately to the field, she'll be active, she'll have a big power bump, and then she's going to be immune to abilities because Balthier is on the field with her. As far as his second ability, it would be better if we had more Sky Pirate backups, but currently there is 2 Sky Pirate backups. 2 of them are named Fran, which you probably don't want to use because you probably want to use the forward Fran. And then the other one is Tomage. So in this case, you'd have to be doling 2 Job Sky Pirate forwards, or at least 1 forward, to then give another one haste in 2000. So, again, that's an effect I think could be solid if there were more Sky Pirates and more backups. But for his first effect alone, I do like that he brings in that Fran. If you don't like that Fran, you probably don't like this card either. You could also bring in Elza, and then she'll draw you a card. But I mean, I don't know. They're still trying to do something with Sky Pirates, but it's struggling.
So the cool thing is that when you play him and bring in a Sky Pirate, you can dull those 2 Sky Pirates and then boost something that's on the field. So it has that immediate impact of these guys can't attack this turn, so you can give something 2,000 in haste. Or if you bring back Fran and you dull him and somebody else, or even him and Tomage or whatever, and then you can give her 2k haste, and then she's quite powerful. So I don't dislike that second ability. It's not an every turn thing. I think if you have a lot of reactivation, it's something that you can always threaten with, but it does have that application that the turn he comes in, it's pretty easy to use. He literally sets it up himself, so that's not too bad. Yeah,
great point.
Okay, now we've got Counterfeit Youth. This is a 2 CP mannequin, and it has 5k power. If you control 4 or more job mannequins, he's going to gain 3,000 power, haste, and then he cannot be blocked by a 4 to cost 4 or more. So 8k power and haste is fine, but the cost 4 more block, like, that's tough. I wish it was 3. That would be really nice for mannequins, but this is pretty fair.
Yeah, it's solid. I've learned to not underestimate something that has any kind of text, which reads something can't be blocked. And I've seen many a game stolen and lost because someone thought they had a bunch of blockers out. Oh, here comes this thing that couldn't be blocked. So I'm kind of rating this pretty highly just because I've seen Shikaris and Ishtola and all these other things slip under everybody. So I'm predicting he'll be very strong in mannequins. That's my guess.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Good perspective to have as someone that did not play a lot during the Shikari meta.
All right, who do we got next? We have Mid from Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, another character I don't know from Brave Exvius, so I'm guessing this is season 2.
Yes, it is season 2, and I won't tell too much about what it is, except that she is a Dragoon. So they could have given her job Dragoon, but they didn't.
And when we all saw this art, she clearly looks like a Dragoon. So at first, I remember when I saw it, I was like, oh, a Wind Dragoon. Oh, it's no member of the Orders. Huh, interesting. Okay, so anyway, Mid, member of the Orders, Brave Exvius, 4 cost, 7,000 power forward, back attack. Ooh, don't get to see a whole lot of that these days. So when Mid enters the field, choose one forward other than Mid you control. Until the end of the turn, it gains 1,000 power, and this forward cannot be chosen by your opponent's abilities. So on the highest end of possibilities, this card could be insanely powerful because it's a back attack on a body. You know, back attack's always a cool keyword, so they're not expecting it. And then suddenly, if they were hitting something with a Braskas or any powerful ability and says, hey, now it's protected, now it's stronger, so maybe it can block you. incredibly powerful. So it wouldn't surprise me to see this card just being obnoxious. That being said, I also recognize on the low end, she doesn't do anything herself, and she does need another target to protect because she can't even protect herself with her ability. And then beyond that, she's obviously just a blank card. So do you value an overcosted undercurved body for that crazy back attack protection play? If you do, mid's going to be great. If you're not, though, maybe she won't be so hot.
Yeah, I think she's probably a one of, or if we get more FFBE support, then that's good. She's actually one of the only targets for our FFBE searcher, which we're going to reveal soon. So that's something to note. And I do actually want to mention that the back attack is that she jumps a lot in the game, and she actually does come in during FFBE by surprise many times, and nice. She does protect things with, by holding people off. So this is they got it spot on for her abilities for this card. That's always cool to see. I appreciate that.
When you get that thematic, awesome.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here he is, one of the cutest Moogles yet, in my opinion. This is Mog FFBE, a 3CP searching backup job Moogle. And when he enters the field, you can search for a category FFBE forward and add it to your hand. So within Wind, you've got your Finas, of course. And then you've also got now Mid, and you've also got Cid, the Cid legend that we had a while ago. Now, you have FFBE characters in almost every single element. You have light and dark. So this is a very good searcher. But if you're actually looking to make an FFBE deck, there really isn't enough reason to keep a bunch of FFBE forwards together yet. So that's sadly not a possibility. But this will obviously be huge when that comes together. But there's some very good targets, including Reagan and Citra and Veritas and your Finas and all sorts of things. So the new Rain and Axstar, all these guys last well. They can all be searched via this card. So definitely a good searcher to have in the game.
Yeah, and only going to get stronger as they print more of those. So I love his little design. I'm so curious. He's got this little lion's mane, and he's got a little Saturn planet on his for his pom pom, and he's holding a little hand pointer. What a curious little Moogle.
Yeah, no, and they're pretty funny. There's actually a King Moogle in FFBE, and he runs the exchange shop for a lot of the side quests that you do. And I would love, he's a little advisor that looks very regal. He has a little guard of his captain. There's definitely potential to have an FFBE Moogle tribe, and I would love to see that.
Awesome.
Okay, so that's going to be it for all of our Wind cards, right? There's no starter cards.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. That is it for the Wind cards. So Travis, what are you thinking about Wind this set?
As I kind of alluded to earlier, in general, all the elements in this set, they've got one of certain types, the monsters, the summons, the backup cascade. But as I pointed out, the Wind ones, even though I don't think you'll ever really use them, they all do seem to have just slightly better effects than everyone else. Somebody at Hobby Japan just loves Wind, I suppose. For once, there doesn't seem to be anything game-breaking. Hopefully I'm right about that. But there are some really cool specialized cards. The Cid Haze seems like he's just going to be awesome potential for engineers. 8 seems solid for cadets. The little white mage standard unit seems neat. Barbariccia seems awesome for archfiends. Hopefully Balthier has potential for sky pirates. And the mid, maybe that'll be a bigger surprise than I'm expecting. So, again, so far, I think it's probably the best of the 3 elements we've gotten. Honestly, I'd say it's a breeze.
Yeah. Well, you've said it all. So thank you so much for coming on and helping me out with this review today. We're going to be back soon with another review. I believe that we've got Earth coming up next, which is my favorite element, so I'm very excited about that. And please, everybody, make sure you go check out Travis's YouTube channel. The links are in the description below. I'm pointing down. And otherwise, we will see you next time.
Sounds great. See you then, guys.